Faded glory, spores of war. The lab of shadows. The heavy steel door hissed as it sealed shut, locking Commander Carlos and Raven inside the dimly lit laboratory. The faint hum of machines echoed through the sterile chamber, and the air reeked of chemicals and decay. Glass containers lined the walls, each one filled with glowing green fungal cultures that pulsed faintly, as if alive. Biohazard symbols are plastered on every surface. Carlos scanned the room, his sharp eyes narrowing. "This place reeks of death," he said, his voice low but firm. "Whatever they're cooking in here isn't medicine." Raven knelt by a shattered glass container, her gloved fingers brushing against a faint smear of residue. "It's not just death," she murmured. "It's control." Carlos turned to face her, his jaw tight. "What do you mean?" She held up a small vial labeled Strain X13 Adaptive Mold and shook it gently. The liquid inside seemed to writhe. "This isn't just a weapon. It's a plague, genetically engineered to spread through air and water." Carlos stepped closer, inspecting the vial. "You're saying this mold can't be stopped?" Raven nodded. "If released, it would contaminate food supplies, water sources, even the air we breathe. It could bring entire cities to their knees without firing a single bullet." The betrayal. A sudden hiss filled the room as a ventilation shaft opened overhead. Carlos spun, drawing his weapon. "We're not alone." Footsteps echoed from the far corridor, and moments later a figure emerged. A tall, thin man in a lab coat stained with soot and grime. His pale face was gaunt, and his eyes, bloodshot and sunken, gleamed with twisted delight. "Dr. Voss," Raven hissed, raising her pistol. "You traitorous bastard!" Voss raised his hands mockingly. Now, let's not be hasty. You wouldn't want to shatter one of these precious containers in the crossfire, would you?" Carlos's finger twitched on the trigger. "Give me one reason not to shoot you where you stand." "Because," Voss replied, his lips curling into a grin, "I hold the fail-safe." He pulled a small device from his pocket, a detonator. "Destroy this lab, and the spores scatter into the air. You'll kill everyone within 100 miles. Raven's eyes darted to Carlos. "He's bluffing." "Am I?" Voss pressed the button, and green lights flickered to life along the walls. Air vents hissed, releasing faint clouds of spores into the room. "Let's see how long your masks hold up." Desperate escape. Carlos lunged, knocking the detonator from Voss's hand, but the scientist scrambled away, his laughter echoing through the chamber. Raven smashed a control panel, trying to shut down the vents, but the system was locked. "We need to get out of here, now!" Carlos grabbed her arm, dragging her toward the exit as alarms blared. "Seal the lab! We'll burn this place down after we're clear!" Voss's voice echoed behind them. "You can't stop progress, Commander! The Architect's vision will rise from the ashes of your failure!" Raven paused, her eyes locked on Voss as the spores thickened. "Not if I can help it." She fired her pistol, shattering the glass walls of the containment chamber. Flames erupted as the chemicals inside reacted, igniting the spores. Carlos pulled her through the exit, slamming the door just as the explosion rocked the building. Smoke and green mist seeped through cracks in the walls. Aftermath. Outside, the two collapsed onto the ground, tearing off their masks to breathe clean air. Carlos coughed, wiping soot from his face. That was too close. Raven stared at the burning building. Voss wasn't working alone. The Architect's fingerprints are all over this. Carlos nodded grimly. "Then we need to find him, before he unleashes this nightmare on the world." The Architect's plans far away, in a dimly lit control room filled with screens, the Architect watched the footage of the lab's destruction. "Let them think they've won," he murmured, his voice cold and calculating. "This was just a test. The real plague has already begun." His eyes glinted as he turned to a vial glowing faintly in the darkness. "Soon the world will kneel, not to gods but to science.